So a lot of you have been asking when I knew something was wrong with Bonnie and how it kind of all eventuated from when she was born to then when she got put on tubes. So I literally knew from night 2 at hospital that something wasn't right. I couldn't lay her on her back at all. And if I did, especially after a feed, she would either vomit straight away, and then it would sound like she was kind of choking, or she would sound real, I like to put it as like French bulldoggy after. So I really couldn't put her on her back at all. And the midwives and the pediatrician were just like, oh, you've just got a chucky baby, it's all good, that's just how it is. And in my head I was like, Harry was pretty chucky, but it wasn't like this. Like it was, if you've got a chucky baby, you feed them, you hold them up for 20 to 30 minutes, and then you can put them down. Whereas with Bonnie, I literally could not put her down at all. So she would not sleep. So for the first 2 weeks before anything kind of happened, I literally got no sleep. And it just started to get worse too. So that first week when she was born, I was pumping, so she was getting some food in. The second week, I put her on the boob and I had huge oversupply. And then that second week, we went and got her weighed. And it was like horrible those first 2 weeks, like literally no sleep. And she was really struggling. And at nights, I would get so kind of stressed out because I could tell she was really struggling. Like I'll put a little video here so you can see. I'll give you a quick glimpse of what she was like during the night. So you can see in that video that like she's really struggling to breathe, a red eye, she would vomit. Like that's literally what it was like for the first 2 weeks. And during the night, the poor little thing was just struggling so much. And I knew something wasn't right, but I just kept getting told, you got a chucky baby. Literally night 3 in hospital actually was one of the worst experiences because I had no sleep and I was wanting some help. I was in there by myself because Alex was here. And I remember saying to one of the nurses, can she go to nursery just for like 3 hours, just so I can get 3 hours sleep? I've been here for this is the 3rd night. I've not had any sleep since going into labor. I just need to get like 3 hours so I can survive tomorrow. And one of the midwives was like, yeah, let me just go check with my supervisor. And then the supervisor midwife was outside my door and I heard her say, that mum just needs to look after her baby. She's just got a chucky baby. We can't deal with it tonight. And I was just like, I remember just like bawling my eyes out and calling Alex and being like, I need to come home. Like I'm going to get more support at home than I am in here. But I understand, like they were so busy in there. There was only 2 staff on. I get it. But like, oh my gosh, all I needed in that moment was just some help. But yeah, so she was really bad overnight. And I would see it. Alex and I were sleeping in separate beds. So because he was on Harry patrol, I was on Bonnie patrol, and he never really saw how bad she got overnight. And because people just kept being like, you just got a chucky baby, whatever, I was like, maybe this is what a chucky baby is. Maybe this wasn't maybe Harry wasn't as chucky as I thought, or even though he was chucky heaps, I was like, maybe this is just more severe and maybe this is normal. It made me question a lot of things. But then suddenly, like, I was just like, something isn't right. And so I emailed the pediatrician. I tried to book in with them. She was on leave. So then that got pushed back 5 days. Then we actually went in and I got all these videos of Bon overnight, like the one I just showed you. And I went in and the pediatrician was like, oh, you're right. This isn't normal. And I was like, fucking, like, finally. And so she said, look, we're going to put her on some milk thickener. She's quite, very refluxy, obviously in pain with that. And she goes, she might have some floppy. Actually, did she say that? I can't fully remember. I think she may have said she may have some floppy, like, airways. No, she didn't actually. That didn't come up then. She just thought it was the reflux, so she was just going to treat that. But then she was like, I'm going to book her in for a scan tomorrow. and we're going to see like a swallowing scan, and we're going to see what's happening when she has a feed. We're like, cool. Went to the scan that next morning, and the person who did that scan was like, you need to go back to your pediatrician immediately. It's urgent. She's aspirating every single time that she feeds. So by aspirating, I mean the food was going directly into her lungs, and her swallow, like she just couldn't coordinate it. So there was obviously what they call Laryngomalacia there, which is just like the floppiness of the voice box. And obviously when you swallow, if it's not coordinated or if it's floppy, the milk can kind of go down in the wrong way and then go down your lungs instead of into your stomach. And so that second week when I was breastfeeding, obviously I thought she was sucking fine. In her mouth she was, but then obviously the swallow aspect wasn't right. So it wasn't well. I almost lost my whole supply that week. The poor thing, she went back down to birth weight. And that's when we knew something was wrong. So after the swallow scan, the pediatrician said, okay, let's try this thickener first. Let's see how she goes. And then I think it was that afternoon or the day after, I went to go get Harry from childcare, and Alex had Bonnie by himself for a little bit. And next minute he calls me and he's just like, Bonnie's just stopped breathing for a bit. Like, what the fuck? We need to do something. What's going on? And I came home and she was kind of in one of those episodes again, like the really red eyes, struggling to breathe, sounding like a French bulldog. And like so upset, the poor thing. And Alex is like, what the fuck has this been happening? Like, is this what she like overnight? And I was like, yes. And he's like, this is fucked. So by that stage we knew she'd been aspirating, and Alex isn't one to be dramatic at all. I'm more the dramatic one in the relationship. But he's just like, I think we need to take her to emergency. Like, this is like, if she stops breathing again or whatever, like we can't risk that. And I was like, of course. I then fortunately have one of my best mates is an emergency ped. So I messaged her. I hate being one of these people that just go to emergency for nothing. And even though in that instance, like, I had known for all those 2 weeks that something wasn't right, but they kept telling me I was just overreacting essentially. So I was in my head a fair bit with this, but it was good that Alex got to see it, because then it was that reassurance I needed to be like, no, something really isn't right. And so I messaged my friend and she's like, take her straight to emergency. And so we took her in, and then, that started the whole ball rolling. So that first day we were in there for 9 nights. I was in there for 9 nights with Bon. I stayed in there every night except for the last night. That was the hardest thing that time in there. We didn't know what was going on with her until the second to last night. She was struggling so much. I was still recovering. I was still 2 weeks postpartum. Like, everything was hitting me. I was so stressed. You know, I'd lost one of my best mates not long before this as well. So I was an emotional wreck, baby blues. Like, it was just so much at that time. And, you know, Alex was trying to be here with Harry. I felt so guilty because I had hardly been with Harry in that time too. The stress was just next level. And they did all these different tests with her. Then she was struggling like even more, so it was just getting worse. And so they put her on a tube. I can't remember what day now. It all just seems like such a blur. And when they put her on a tube, they pretty much were just like, it could just be for a few days. She may go home with it for like, you know, a little bit, but not for long. It didn't really seem like it was going to be something that was going to be long term or anything at that stage. And I think that was probably like 2 nights into our stay. Then it kind of kept going. They did an oximetry test. They kept kind of like, they tested the bottle, her still having some stuff on the bottle with more thickener. So it was a whole lot of trial and error. Then eventually, I think night 8, day 8 or 9, all the kind of tests came back. So she did more swallowing tests, more x-rays to see how it was going. And it came back that she had laryngomalacia. The ENT doctor diagnosed that. Then in the scans, it just showed that, like, even if they increased the thickener, she was still aspirating. So then that solidified her being on the tube. And then there were different ways that she could be on the tube too. I don't want to get too technical with it. But on day 8, every health professional came in. It was like ENT doctor, speech pathologist, dietitian, all came in, and within like 2 hours we found out that she was potentially going to be on a feeding tube for up to 12 months and on oxygen full time for up to 12 months too. And we had no idea that the oxygen was even a thing at that stage. So that came as a huge shock. And I was just like, holy shit, like, is she okay? Like, what the hell? It just seemed a lot worse. And I was so sleep deprived at that stage. I spent every night in hospital, and she, the same thing. In those first 2 weeks, she didn't sleep. So I pretty much had not slept for like 3 weeks at that stage. And when they all came in to tell me, I was so overwhelmed and scared and just didn't know what to expect. So that was a lot. And then we had to learn how to use all the equipment and then get her home. And so, yeah, that was the first stay, which went for 9-10 days. And it was a whirlwind. So if any of you have had your kids put on a nasal gastric tube or oxygen, I totally feel you. So many of you reached out to me. It's actually a lot more common than what you think, especially the oxygen. I had no idea how common it was. If any of you did actually message me, thank you so much. It actually helped so much in calming my nerves and just helping me realize that it's, hopefully not going to be a forever thing. And just allowing me, like, some of you just said it's okay to grieve the newborn phase that you thought you were going to have that you don't have. And just things like that I couldn't really put into words how I was feeling. Like, I was so upset. I was so glad that she was going to be okay, and I was so glad we had answers, but I was so upset still. And I think it was the fatigue too, like the sleep deprivation at that stage was crazy. But as soon as she went on the oxygen, she was so much better, like so much better. And once we got the feeds right with the tube, she was actually so much better. So seeing that happen, I was like, okay, I feel like as long as she's happy, I don't care. And then it was just about getting used to it. But it was a big shock. And coming home, I just felt so protective of her. Harry was still at childcare, and then for a week, and then he brought RSV home, and then that put Bon into hospital for another week. And so at that stage, we were like, we need to pull Harry out of childcare. That we just can't risk it until she gets stronger. We need to pull him out, or at least until summer, until the winter season's finished. And so that was, again, like another stressful thing in terms of, I thought I was going to be getting back to work after 3 months, and I just was like, nah, I'm not going to work for the next year. Fortunately, we could make that decision, but it still stressed me out at the same time. I've gone from being very go with work to very much having to take a back seat and be here for my kids, and I'm so grateful we can be, and I'm so grateful Alex has been able to be home too. If Alex wasn't here for this period, I would have been absolutely lost in that time. It would have been very difficult. Harry probably still would have had to go to childcare, and which would have just added an added element of stress as well. So we're very lucky to be able to keep him home. But we're still very much in the unknown at that stage. We didn't know how long she was going to be on the tubes for, and how long the whole process was going to be. So end of the day, if you have a baby and if you think something is not right, don't stop pushing to find answers. Like, literally do not stop pushing to find answers. I knew something wasn't right, and yeah, those hospital, the videos that I took, take lots of videos of your kids if there's something that's happening overnight rather than during the day. And if you have to stay in hospital for that long, my gosh, I feel for you. That was one of the hardest times ever, but we got through it, thankfully. So I will now keep you updated as to how she progresses post being home after those hospital stints.